So we want to talk about mental health today with our 9 health expert, Dr. Payal Kohli, with us. And we're talking about the mental health of our kids. And I imagine this has, we know of the impact it has on all of us when we hear these stories. But you say there is some science that also talks about the development of kids when they hear stories like these.
Yeah, our kids' brains are in a susceptible phase. And so what we're seeing is that when you have the acute reaction occur, you have an arousal of your nervous system. So the mental health effects of that nervous system arousal are disorders of excess arousal, like anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorders. And seeing those happen in our children can actually propagate themselves faster because their brains are more plastic. So they keep getting re-exposed to that violence. They actually start developing a fear response.
I want to ask you though, you're talking about shielding. Should you consider shielding your kids from this news, or is it news that they need to somehow deal with? It's reality.
I think the shielding can help protect them, because what we're seeing is that it's a self-propagating sort of cycle. And the problem is you can only shield them from the reality so much.
Right.
So you can shield them from the news, but if it keeps happening over and over again in schools, you can't shield them from that. So what happens is our kids develop that fear, and then over time that arousal response turns into more of a withdrawal response. So later in time we start to see more, depression, more withdrawal symptoms, more social isolation. And we know the year after some sort of gun violence, whether you witnessed it directly or indirectly through the news, you're more likely to be on an antidepressant.
I mean, this is more than emotional. If you're talking about actual neurological development and changes, I mean, our kids have going through so much, they have to learn. They have to learn all the things that they need to go on and succeed in life. How is that affecting that prospect?
Oh my goodness. So it's not just the learning, but it's actually the way that their brains are wired. So academically, we know that kids that are exposed to gun violence are, have lower GPAs the year after. They're more likely to be absentee. They're less likely to graduate high school, college, or go to graduate school. So you're talking about a domino effect that's taking them into their whole life, their whole academic career. And then, of course, their cognitive development and their personalities could also be different. So when you keep firing those neurons that are that fear response, that fight or flight, adults have a more mature fight or flight response. Kids are immature, so they don't know how to handle it. So those circuits get cemented in a bad way. So kids that are exposed repetitively to the violence are actually more likely to resolve conflict with violence because they don't know how to resolve it in non-violent ways.
So when they hear a story like this, you'd think maybe shut down, but you say they can't shut down. The kids aren't capable yet.
They're not capable of it. Those circuits are immature. So what they develop is a fear response in their brain, and that fear response can then manifest itself into personality changes, aggressive behavior. For some kids, drugs, substance use, poor academic scores. For some kids, withdrawal, because when you process that fear response repeatedly over time, you don't know how to cope with it. You start to internalize it and withdraw from others.
Yeah, what about any physical symptoms that parents can see to be looking out for?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. When you keep firing those circuits in the brain, you're actually triggering areas of the brain that increase your cortisol levels. You're triggering the fear centers that can activate all those stress hormones. So you can actually get tremulousness, you can get lack of appetite, you can get weight loss, you can get poor sleep. You can see so many manifestations in our kids that can occur in so many different ways. So I would say for parents, the biggest telltale sign, especially in elementary aged kids, is really looking for sort of behavioral changes, heightened irritability, and to Tom's point, withdrawal, because they don't know how to cope, so sometimes they'll just withdraw. If they're excess playing out superheroes, that they're either the superhero or they're fighting the superhero, that could also be a way in which their kind of immature brain is trying to cope with some of that fear and some of that violence.
It's a lot to look out for. It's so important, though. We'll certainly talk about it more. Dr. Payal Kohli, thanks as always.
We know this has been difficult for so many families across Colorado. If you need some extra help, Colorado Crisis Services is available 24/7. Call 1-844-493-8255, or you can even text TALK to 38255. You can also access resources through the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Just dial 988.